Yeah, really well, Jarrod. Thanks for joining us. And I know it's going to be a fantastic webinar today. We've got already over a dozen people joining, and we've got more coming in every few seconds. So we might give them another 15 or 20 seconds. We're right at the top of the hour now, and we'll get started. We should finish before noon, Sydney time. But I'd like to say welcome to everyone from all the different places people are dialing in, and welcome, Jarrod. I know we're going to do a quick introduction as we get through the session, but it is great to have you.
Thank you, Tim. It's delighted to be on speaking to everyone from all different parts of the globe. It's always great to get a good, diverse collection of people together to listen and learn.
Yeah. Okay. So I know we've just gone 11:01. Why don't we get started? So Jarrod, let's I know you're going to do a quick introduction to yourself. So do you want to kick off?
Certainly, Tim. So thanks everyone for jumping on the webinar today and taking some time out of your day to speak more and learn about the digital workplace. And I guess in terms of just a little bit about me, is that I've been around the HR space now for many years, and it's a part of the space that I've been around is very much from the area that's commonly known as workforce management, which is a part of HR, and we'll talk about more about what that is and the benefits it could give later on. But I've very much learnt a lot having been in the space for some time, and in fact I'm so passionate about it, I've written a book recently, and the book's called The Digital Workforce, and I felt that it was a really opportune time within the industry to actually take the time out and write about the digital workforce for a couple of reasons. One is that there was not a lot documented in terms of how to achieve value from digital from a customer's perspective. So the book, when I wrote through the eyes of a customer, and the book is written in two halves. The first half is really what is workforce management? How do you get value from your people? How do you turn that value into benefiting the customer? And then how does digital play an impact on that? And then the second half of the book is very much on a framework to actually achieve success with digital in your business. So that's sort of what I've been spending a lot of time doing and very passionate about. So that's a little bit about myself, Tim.
Yeah. No, actually, I remember it was at the launch, and I must admit I'm only three-quarters of the way through my copy, but I have been making furious notes left, right, and centre. And I do want to send a copy to our product manager afterwards. But it's a great book actually. So if you haven't already got a copy and people are looking, I know there'll be links there in the presentation. Do highly recommend it. I've been enjoying it.
Yeah, and really, I guess this webinar, part of what this webinar is all about today is just to unpack a lot of what the learnings are from that book, and really just unpack it in the light of practical anecdotes and real life examples that I've seen take place now and over the years. So hopefully today's webinar will be very much a learning webinar.
Exactly. So I know some of the things that we were going to look at as well is how WFM has changed, and I think as we do that too, I had a poll question I want to ask Jarrod when we get a bit further in, but I'll let you proceed.
Sure. And just before we sort of jump into the webinar proper, I might just take a quick minute to talk about a conference that I was at last week. And in Las Vegas last week, there was the largest HR technology conference in the world called HR Technology Conference, and it was great to go to that conference and to sort of see the showcasing of the vendors, where the vendors are at in terms of HR technology, but then also in terms of where the thinking is going and the thought leadership is going in the HR space. And and I think that the biggest takeout for me from the conference was very much what Josh Burson was calling the flow of work, and my takeout of that is that it's not about HR technology now for the sake of HR. It's actually about HR technology for the sake and the benefit of the end user. And so there's quite a fundamental shift that's taking place in HR at a macro level at the moment, which is becoming very much focused on the workforce, on the employee. And and the other big takeout that came out of the conference was that it's very important to break down silos that exist within businesses at the moment. So it's all about delivering outcomes for the employees and ultimately the customers that the businesses serve. So I think it may not be a surprise to a lot of people that the messages, that the key themes out of the conference were so simplistic in their nature, but I think it's something that we can all comprehend and consume very easily and all sort of take away from into our day to day working life to improve the way in which we all work and we all deliver outcomes.
Well, exactly. I mean, the flow of work is one of those fundamental concepts that we've been promoting for some time too, and it's always great to hear Josh Burson, agree with you, and I think actually, I mean, SumTotal has a huge presence at HR Tech in Vegas, and frankly, I wish I could have gone, so I'm very jealous. But I understand you got a chance to talk to some of our thought leaders like Mornay, who hopefully is coming out to Australia for our HR Tech and other various sessions. That would have been of interest to you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was lucky to spend about half an hour with Mornay, and Mornay actually looks after the product suite from a workforce management perspective for SumTotal, and it was interesting to see what the larger product suppliers are doing in that space, and just like I was sort of talking about the flow of work and breaking down the silos on the technology side, the same thing is happening. So the technology suppliers are looking to provide platforms by which there's as Jason Averbook calls it, an intravenous to the workforce. So a single way or a common way in which the workforce can interact with the technology to actually make their work life as smooth and as frictionless as it possibly can be. So there's an amazing transformation taking place in the technology space at the moment to support this flow of work or this breaking down of the silos.
No. And I think that in many ways leads into what we're going to talk about next, and just seeing how workforce management has evolved and to get to that point you discussed, where it really does break down silos and integrate completely with the flow of work. And I think that's what we were going to move on to, wasn't it?
Exactly. So I might move to the next slide now, and really this is a little bit about the history of workforce management and how it fits into the broader HR sphere, and I think it's always important to look to the past before we can see to the future. And workforce management started in the late 1890s with time recording, and it was all about recording start and stop times, and it started with the Bundy clock, and that was ultimately what existed in the 1890s, and it stayed very much the same through until the 1970s, and it was very much around when did I start, when did I stop, and making sure that accurate information was fed through to payroll so that the staff in an organization were actually paid correctly and that the organization was compliant. And so that was where workforce management started. And I think there's a number of people that still sort of see that as a core part of WFM, which it certainly is. But over the time, that evolution has evolved. And if we look to the next change, and coincidentally, these advancements in workforce management evolution also correspond to the industrial revolutions. So if you look at the 1890s to the 1970s, that was the second industrial revolution. The third industrial revolution was all about the invention of the microprocessor, and that is when the next evolution of workforce management took place. And because there was a microprocessor available, that then meant that you could start doing automatic pay calculations. So you could actually use the computer to automate what was done in a manual way previously. And because you're able to have a computer again, you're able to start to roster and to schedule your staff in a more consistent way, and using a technology layer to actually do it. So you could actually see things such as coverage. Do I actually have coverage for a certain shift? And do I have the right skills available with those staff members to fill a certain shift? And then the impacts of workforce management within the organisation actually increased over this time as well, to take into consideration things like supervisors, so that supervisors knew who was at work, whether they worked overtime or not, do they improve overtime. And then because of those types of real-time pay implications, it also gave more visibility around costs. And you could actually start to see what the cost of a shift was in real time. And if I made a staffing decision to run overtime for an extra half an hour, for example, would that actually what would that actually do to my budget and to my forecasted labor costs? So so that's sort of the next evolution of workforce management. And then moving forward to today, which corresponds to the fourth industrial revolution, there's all sorts of digital technologies around us today that provide us the ability to do things like forecasting, predict the cost of shifts in advance, give employees flexibility to decide whether to accept or reject a shift off their mobile phone, determine when their next shift is going to be, for example. And then things like artificial intelligence are very much coming into play today. And artificial intelligence is enabling some of those predictive functions that we're looking at. So you're able to identify trends with the workforce. Are certain workers or certain groups of workers continually coming in late to work? And then why are they coming in late? And so that enables the organisation or the supervisors to start taking learning from that, and then working with that. And then similarly, the impacts of workforce management have now even grown further into the organisation, into operations management, into HR, because you might have someone that's continually late for work, which your workforce management system will enable you to determine. And then that might trigger a performance record in the HR system, so that the manager can speak to that staff member about being late. There's
Yes, in fact,
also a
we're
whole
seeing exactly that sort of functionality as well. So it's really interesting you say these things, because obviously this is where the products that we develop are at and are heading.
Absolutely, and they're very sort of symbiotic, and you come back to sort of where we started the conversation at the outset around the flow of work, breaking down the silos. I think if you look at where we're at today with workforce management, and you look at that right hand side of the diagram on the screen, you can see that there are so many different business areas impacted there, that it can be easy to do things in a very siloed nature. And if you come back to the left-hand side of the diagram, which looks at where workforce management started, which was around start and stop times and accuracy and payroll, if you haven't educated and moved your thinking around what workforce management can do to you and its impacts within HR, then again, there's the opportunity or the possibility that there's a misalignment in where you're at. So there's a massive chasm of knowledge and development and business benefits that can actually be achieved. And it's a matter of getting everyone aligned and on that journey to ensure that everyone is receiving the maximum value that they can from their people.
Now, speaking of maximum value, I mean, I know one of the key things you want to cover is the benefits of WFM and how it can give advantages to businesses. And I think that's where we're going to move to next. Just before we do, I was having a quick look through our Twitter feed, and I actually found a photo of you watching a presentation by one of my peers up on our Twitter feed. And I don't know if I can get it up on the screen, but I actually have that photo from HR Tech. So it's there, and there's evidence. I actually spotted you in the crowd watching Mornay present.
There you go.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I was sitting in the crowd. So I'd be interested to see that myself, Tim.
Yeah, I posted the link in our internal chat, and if I can, I mean, well, unless you want me to quickly share the screen and show it, we should move on, and I'll let you decide.
All right. Well, maybe if there's a couple of minutes at the end, we can have a look at it. Oh,
Yeah, there it is. There you can see the
okay.
link in the chat.
All right. All right. Okay, well let's move on and look at the benefits of workforce management. And I'm going to unpack these benefits via some real examples on the next few slides. So I won't spend a lot of time drilling down into each one of these now. But if we come back to the book that I wrote and that we spoke about at the top of this webinar, these benefits I unpack in the book with a lot more detail around how you can achieve these benefits via workforce management and via HR. So, and again, because WFM has evolved so much over the years, the benefits that you can actually get from effective workforce management have also increased. And and if you look at again back to one of the things Josh Burson talks about, WFM has moved very much from a system of record to now being a system of productivity. So if you think on the left hand side of the evolution diagram, it was very much a system of record. If you evolve and you move through to where we're at now, it's very much a system of productivity.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I think towards the end of this, when I have a chance to sort of talk about a couple of things, we've got some interesting statistics about the productivity gains people have seen by implementing these types of systems.
Sure, absolutely. So what we might do now is we might look at some practical examples. And what I'm going to do over the next few slides, I'm actually going to look at the impacts of WFM on your people, on your customer, and then what does digital mean to that? And then I'm going to wrap it all back together. So that's what I'm going to talk about now for the next 5 minutes or so. So in terms of your people, if you look at WFM, it enables you to do real-time management of those people and forecasting the costs. So if you look at the lady on the screen there now, she's a nursing unit manager, and she has caregivers come into her nursing department, and they are helping out the patients in the hospital. So what the nursing unit manager is able to do is know what staff that she's got available to her, what skills they've got, and what costs they're going to have. And ultimately, what that enables the nursing unit manager to do is to then spend time on things such as leadership development within the team, improving the competency of the team, helping them with their learning, and most importantly, improve the overall quality of care back to the patients in the hospital. So so the benefits that you can actually get from this are very tangible from a people point of view. And similarly, if we looked at different industries, whether they be manufacturing or whether they be retail, we could unpack similar examples like this. But it's very much a frontline operational tool that can be very much targeted to really help the workforce achieve value and ultimately get on with real value add and quality output.
And I mean, just to add to that too, what we've seen, Jarrod, is as part of moving from paper-based systems, which is often where people are at, um, and making these processes more efficient. You're removing manual processing, you're ensuring consistency, and eliminating errors, right? Just errors that can sneak in, or even fraud. Things like buddy punching, or where someone clocks in and clocks out for you, and those types of fraudulent activities are all part of that, making the processes more efficient, aren't they?
Yeah, it's very true. And even today, you'd be surprised how many organizations are still working off paper and still working off semi-automated processes. So the opportunity for improvement is significant. And it will be for a very long time at the moment. And certainly in Australia at the moment, there's a lot of media attention on the compliance side of workforce
Yes,
management and ultimately
certainly
leading
women.
through to the payroll side about there's a lot of organisations out there, so it's very real and it's very concrete in terms of the benefit and the return that you can get. So so moving on, so that's what it sort of looks like from the eyes of a manager and a worker. If you look at how this might manifest itself now into the customer, so if you've got the right staff in your store, and let's take a retail example this time. If you've got the right staff in your store that are ultimately aligned with the demand, so if you think of a retail store at lunchtime, it might get busier because people are out shopping. So you naturally want to ensure that the staffing levels in your store are aligned to that busier period, so that one, your staff aren't getting frustrated because there's customers waiting, and two, you want your customers to get served as quick as possible so that they can get on with their day. So again, there's very tangible outcomes from a customer perspective, and and then if you look at that in terms of how does that then break down from a HR point of view, knowing that you've got the right people there in work in at the store with the right skills enables you as a store manager to concentrate on things like performance management, talent management, learning, which is a lot of the stuff that SumTotal concentrate on, and Skillsoft.
Absolutely.
So so it's all again back to that breaking down the silos that we were talking about earlier on, and ultimately the benefits of this are significant because if you can provide a great employee experience and a great customer experience, that can ultimately help build culture within your organization and build loyalty around your brand. So again, when you tie all of this together and look at it from that macro level, the benefits are quite tangible and quite significant for people and for customers.
Well, absolutely. And the costs of things like non-compliance, just making sure people have followed the correct. I mean, just for example, making sure that before you roster someone, they've got the right certification skills can save lives, let alone brand and sort of compliance costs. Sometimes this could be life and death.
It can, and in certain industries, you look at the health industry, for example, it's very relevant, and it's very top of mind for everyone in the health industry.
Mm, absolutely. So
So
that's an
then
interesting
I thought
perspective
what
from
I
the customer point of view, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's important to sort of take it through that whole value chain or that whole flow of work to think about it from all of these different perspectives. And now what I might do is throw a different perspective on it again and look at what digital might mean to all of this. And and I think for me, the big thing with digital workforce management is that ultimately there is there is digital roles that that actually may replace human roles. And if you're replacing, let's say, a frontline call into a call center or equivalent, with a robot. So instead of a human taking a call, a robot might take the call, and you might be thinking, so a lot of that has been happening over years. You'll dial into a call center and you'll say press one for this department or press two for that department. But what I'm talking about is something slightly different to that. I'm talking about an intelligent call routing that actually learns from the interactions that the end customer has with that robot, and so you might find that you're in a situation where there's a weather event or something like that, and a certain number of calls start to come in to a call center that all need to get routed to a certain point. So the intelligence of the solution starts taking steps out of the process to make sure that calls get routed to the right spot. And then similarly, because that uh, computer or that robot is actually replacing a human role, you've actually got to think to yourself, what happens if that computer breaks down? To me, it's analogous to a human being getting sick or not being there, because if that computer broke down and you were having a severe event take place, what do? You can't stop the calls coming into the call center because people need to interact and need to deal with their situations. So, do you actually need to start rostering the robot? Because if the robot breaks down, you might need to actually replace that role with a human role. So, so I think where we saw robotics come into play many years ago in a lot of the manufacturing industries, that the robots actually just replaced human roles. So, take for example the manufacture of a car, but those human roles were never coming back. But in our digital age now, there's the possibility for those human roles to actually be needed alongside a robotic role. So there's all sorts of things to consider here. Um,
Okay.
how do your policies need to change for that,
Mhm.
for example? How do you reskill your staff? What do you do with the staff that are now in those roles?
Well, exactly. When you talk about reskilling, it reminded me of something that I read before, and I think it was a study of using Watson and cancer research in multiple hospitals across the US. And a lot of the research that I've seen suggests that the real power of artificial intelligence and machine learning is when it's combined with humans. Human creativity, human insight, human characteristics that machines can't do, combined with the data mining and automation that you can do with machines. But for that to get the maximum benefit, you need the people with the right skills to work with the digital technologies, and that is a WFM issue.
It is, and I think it's even really it's really as fundamental as keeping it human. It's not that
Very true.
much of a profound statement, but it's just I think while we've got all of these factors to consider, we actually still have to keep it human as well, and that then comes back to that breaking down the silos, the flow of work, taking all of this into consideration, and I guess where I'm going to go towards the end of this call, I'm going to just take a couple of minutes unpacking the future as to where I see the future going, and what we're talking about now comes right into that. So if I was to wrap that then just very simply into sort of a single slide, I'd say that if you consider everything that we've just spoken about, there are multiple impacts within your business. There are multiple benefits that you can actually get from a business perspective, and ultimately you're getting a complete picture of your people. So again, I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide, but the real point is that there are multiple impact areas in the business, and there are multiple benefits that you can actually receive, and considering workforce management as a critical component of the HR area is a great way to get a complete picture of your people.
I think this one's a particularly interesting slide because it really does summarize so many ways that WFM touches on HR. Um, and in fact, I also thought the other one that we sort of started talking about the industrial revolutions and how workforce management has changed over time. And truly, we still see a lot of people on paper using Excel spreadsheets for rostering and scheduling. Actually, this might be a good time for a quick poll. before we move on to the future, Jarrod, what do you think? Because I did have a quick poll just to understand where people were at with their WFM systems. So we've got it up on screen. Would everyone like to take a few seconds
Okay.
just to give us a feel for where they are with their own WFM process? So I asked this around a system. Do you have a system? The answers are either no, and we're not really looking because we're okay. Yes, sorry, no, we don't, but we are considering. We're moving into that stage. Look, we have something, but it's not really meeting our needs, or we have something and it is meeting our needs. So I'm curious just to see where our audience are along that journey um, that we're going to talk about even now. Actually, we're going to move into more of that, aren't we, as we go through the webinar?
Yes, correct.
So we're getting quite a few votes. Not everyone's voted yet, though. Encourage everyone to let us know where they're at on the journey.
That's it. You only get one chance at it. It only takes
Yep.
a second to put your response in.
It's interesting. We're seeing quite a few people have something and it is meeting needs, which is good. But probably the majority are either not there yet, fair to say. And we've got more than a few people haven't voted yet. Any others? Here we go, a couple more. All right. So, what do you make of those results, Jarrod?
I don't have the luxury of seeing the results in front of me, Tim, because I'm doing a screen share at my end.
So we're roughly seeing an even spread between people who don't have anything and not looking, don't have anything and are looking, and have something but it's not meeting their needs. So around equal
Mm.
numbers on that, around about 20% of each, and then about 40%, 45% have something and it actually meets their needs. And I think I'm actually a little bit surprised by that. Generally, when we talk to people, the systems they have may not be what they're looking for, but it looks like we've got a fairly we've got an audience from fairly mature businesses who seem to have some systems already in place, which is really good, actually,
Well,
and a little surprising.
it is excellent, and I guess that's part of the education process is that doing things like this, it actually helps educate that whole market and enables the market to achieve greater value. One of the things that I think's an interesting thing taking place in the market at the moment, though, is the whole shift to cloud and what that actually does. And because you're in an environment now with the cloud solutions that ultimately enable more and more uh, functional releases to
Mm.
hit the market, whether they're every month or every quarter or every year, whatever the
Frequency.
adoption is of those, the frequency exactly. It's it's all about what do you do with that now, and then how do you use that to continually drive innovation into your business so that it continually meets your needs. And I think that's one of the discussions that we're having with a lot of organizations out there now. So while they've got something that meets their needs today, in 3 months or 6 months, is it actually going to meet their needs? And because you've got a millennial workforce that's coming through so quickly now and so rapidly, the millennial workforce has very high expectations of whatever it happens to be, ultimately doing everything via a mobile phone where they can.
Yes.
And and is the organization moving quick enough to actually cater for the needs of the workforce? And that's where I'm sort of seeing a lot of organizations really look for additional assistance and additional benefits to be gained in terms of that rapidly evolving future. Yeah, would you like to add anything else in there, Tim?
No, I would agree. I just think the move to cloud and SaaS really has made a major difference in the speed with which we can roll out new features and new functionality. It doesn't necessarily make the journey to get to that point any easier. You still have to do a lot of that groundwork, and I think that's what we're going to talk about next. But once you're there and you can start to roll out new features on a regular basis, you can really start to see more and more value every time, every quarter,
Yeah,
so on.
You sure can. Absolutely. Okay, so we might move on again. And this is really so the next couple of slides now are really summarizing where you can actually get the benefits and the types of challenges that you see. And then I'll sort of wrap it together by talking about a smart WFM framework, which I talk about further in the book on how to manage these continual improvements and adoptions. So if you look at WFM, really, there's probably four key areas that it can provide you value in, and those key areas are written across the top of the slide. There's gaining additional visibility into your workforce, and that is real-time visibility that you're able to get, and you really are able to get an understanding of your staff, where they're at, what their skills are, what they need, and what they cost, so that you can ultimately make real-time informed decisions. WFM can also really help from an experience point of view. And if you look at making sure that you don't or minimize the wait times. So if you're in a retail, you're not waiting behind a counter for too long, or if you're in health, you're not waiting in a triage room for too long. And then ultimately, it's enabling you to really get the throughput and the customer service or the patients looked after, so that you can actually move on and can continually drive the highest quality that you can. There's also a very much a flexibility component to WFM, so enabling staff members to work via mobile, for example, be able to set their availabilities for work, accept shifts, reject shifts, and ultimately this gives the people that work for you more flexible working arrangements, which can ultimately drive to them becoming more sticky towards your business and enabling them to grow within your business. And then traditionally, workforce management has always been about compliance, which is making sure that the actual payments that your staff are entitled to and the accuracy of those payments is compliant, is legislatively meeting what you need to do as an organization.
I'd even just mention on the whole flexibility, things like shift trading and shift bidding, where people can, if I need time off to look after a sick child, offer my shift and trade it with someone else. Those are exactly the types of features that give the benefits you discuss.
That's it. And a lot of that these days is automated as well. So some of it happens without even a manager getting involved. It's a matter of course, it comes down to the business rules that get configured within the product. But the products are now smart enough to say, if someone actually just wants to swap a shift and there's someone else that can actually pick up that shift and they've got the right skills and they've got the availability, then that can just be a completely automated process. And then ultimately the team leader or the manager knows that their shift is going to be filled with the right number of staff. So there's a lot of automation and efficiency benefits that come from that.
Oh, that's fantastic. Jarrod, while I've got the line, I wanted to remind anyone, if you do have questions, please post them into the Q&A area, because I'll be sure to relay them to Jarrod. And if there aren't any questions, please, Jarrod, let's continue.
Sure. So again, back to the book that I wrote, and I recall I said that I wrote the book in two halves. The first half is, what is workforce management? What does it mean for your people? What does it mean for your customers? And what does digital mean? And we've had a look at that. The second half of the book is a framework that I developed, and again, it's through the eyes of a customer, and it talks about the journey that a customer needs to go on to achieve benefits from workforce management within an organization, within a HR environment. And so traditionally over the years, workforce management projects have really started at my third stage, which I call implement. And you go through a sales process and you start to switch on the features within a product. But from a business point of view, there's there's a there's a lot of pre-work that needs to be done before you get to an implement stage. And because in a workforce management project, you're dealing with the operational workforce, you're dealing with the coalface, the people that work on the floor, and you're dealing with the managers or the supervisors or the team leaders that look after those people. The projects by nature are very change oriented, very adoption oriented. So from a business point of view, it's really important to align correctly and to prepare correctly before you get to that implement stage. Taking an organization on a journey of knowing what change is actually going to happen in the organization. What are we going to need to do to a business to enable that change, to enable the mindset that is required to break down the silos that we've been talking about, to get the flow of work right that we've been talking about, and ultimately to achieve the benefits that you look to achieve from your strategy.
Yeah, I would
And
really like to agree with that so much. Sorry, did not mean to
so
interrupt you
I've no, that's fine. And I've seen so many of these projects delivered over the years, and they don't always meet the business objective that the business is actually trying to achieve. And often I see the technology get blamed for not meeting the
Jared.
objectives, but it's very rarely the technology. It's generally the organization hasn't done the phases that sit around the implement phase to the best of their ability, to the align phase, the prepare phase, and then similarly the other two phases that we haven't really addressed yet are the track and measure, and that's really about making sure that the right governance is in place, making sure that the business objectives that we set out to achieve at the start of the program are getting delivered, making sure that the scope stays on track to deliver those benefits. And we're not just delivering a feature because someone wants it, but we're actually delivering a feature because there's a benefit to the workforce associated with that feature. And then similarly, once the technology's there, it comes back to the discussion that we had earlier around making sure that with cloud, for example, that we're continually innovating and we're continually getting the benefits. And in the book, when you read the second half of the book, I unpack each of these areas with very practical examples from real life that I've seen across a variety of industries, across a variety of organizations, both large and small, to actually to deliver these outcomes.
Yeah, no, and I think this is something that I'd love to reiterate. As a vendor, SumTotal is a vendor of WFM software. We often come in at the implement stage, and too often I've seen people implement processes just because that's the way they've always been done, without really looking at how they can optimize their processes, how they can review the way they do things to break down silos, to make it more efficient, and really use these tools to maximum benefit. And then if it doesn't work, they often blame the tools, when in fact it's the business processes and the decisions they made earlier on or didn't make and didn't even review that have resulted in that failure. And to have someone like Jared and his team come in and really help you look at the strategy, to help you understand what your requirements truly are, and to sort of take a modern digital lens to those requirements before you even go and say, all right, we need the software to do this, can save you so much pain later on. I just cannot reiterate how important that is.
Absolutely, absolutely, that's right. And it's yeah, just consider everything you do through the eyes of an end user, and make sure it's going to work for the end user, and not work because it's going to make HR's life easier. It's all about making the end user's life easier, but while achieving the business benefits.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I might move on, Tim, and there's a couple of
Yes.
slides now from your perspective.
Yes, well, we've got about 15 minutes to go, and again, we do encourage questions. I've only got 3 slides, which I just wanted to quickly mention. One is that, as a vendor, we do have some interesting case studies, and obviously we're looked at by analysts such as Nucleus Research. And this I just thought was worth showing because it puts concrete figures around some of the things Jarrod talked about. So, for example, the New York City Department of Education, a big user of our workforce management tool for rostering and scheduling teachers across the whole of New York City, so just a small borough, they're seeing returns of nearly 300%. And the ability to, increase efficiency, decrease fraud, um, and really sort of streamline the experiences of teachers or whoever your workers might be brings concrete benefits. I mean, these guys were seeing a return to value or payback period of 7 months. And so that's just a really interesting case study. Nucleus also found that implementing workforce management gives you around about $11 return for every dollar you spent. So if you are paper-based, if you're looking for systems, there are great case studies that we've got and great tools that Jarrod has and we have to help you quantify the benefits you will expect to see by implementing these systems. So we can always help with things like the business case. Both, Jarrod's team and even SumTotal has some of those tools that can help with that. Jarrod, if you wouldn't mind just moving to the next slide, I don't need to control it myself.
Sure.
I just wanted to give a 3 or 4 minute introduction to the SumTotal offering and how that then turns into workforce management in the last slide I have. So for those who know SumTotal, most people know us as a learning platform. That's where we come from. And we are the leaders in learning management systems. We are doing things with XAPI and with VR. Those who may have seen it at HR Tech, and Jarrod will have to call up that photo later on. But we released new functionality for tracking VR interactions just at at Vegas. So we do lead and learn. We've also been doing a lot of investment in our talent suite. So we will do the hiring, recruitment, and onboarding, performance management and ongoing feedback, compensation and 360 succession planning. So we do all that. We're at full talent suite. But many people in Australia Pacific don't know that we're actually one of the largest providers of WFM in the world. And we do a full time and attendance scheduling, rostering, absence management solution, which actually will show on the next slide. So if we can just jump to my last slide, I want to give you guys a quick overview of the solutions that we offer so that, when the time comes and you're looking for solutions, just keep us in mind. Our time and attendance will give you that full ability to clock in, clock out. People don't know this, but actually SumTotal manufactures their own wall clocks. They're biometric, so that you can actually use those to do your clock in, clock out. You can do it on a phone, you can do it on the web app, you can do it at a kiosk. We have multiple types of timesheets that people can use, so simple ones, more complex ones that show the clock in, clock out. There's a powerful rules engine. So for example, if you're clocked in within this time frame, we know you're on this job, it goes into overtime, we'll handle all that capability. We even have this really interesting occurrence tracking system. Now, Jarrod gave a bit of an idea of that, where the system can start to automate, you've been late 5 times, I need to do something. So we have a really smart occurrence tracking engine that can give you demerits, can bring certain disciplinary actions to the front, can notify different people, right up to the point where you've hit certain thresholds, it can start, trigger that action to put you on a performance plan or ultimate, dismissal. So there's engines that automate that in a smart way. It's all auditable, and again, we can track and collect that data from multiple places. So it can come in from a laptop, a wall clock, a phone, a point of sale device, or even a desktop device. So you can clock in, clock out through those. So the ability to collect data, process that data in smart ways with all the appropriate rules, and send that down to payroll. That's the time and attendance part. Scheduling is where you can roster people based on their job or their role. So I need certain people to fill this job, or I have these number of people, I need to roster them. We have the self-service capability for employees to say, I'm available at this time. Um, we can schedule to skill, so I need certain people with certain skills, and it validates that skill. What's really nice is because it's an integrated suite, we will validate your skills against the certifications stored in SumTotal Learn. So if you have completed a certain certification, let's say it's the forklift driving certification, there's some internal training, there might be a checklist that you have to complete. That certification, which you have to redo every 24 months, is checked by SumTotal WFM before you actually are rostered. And then we have the whole shift bidding and shift trading that we talked about before. So the ability for people to say, I'm available in this shift, and the system will let people bid for that or automatically schedule them. The other thing that I think is quite interesting to note here is that we talked about the ability to use WFM to free up people's time, to let them focus on the things that can make them better employees, to develop them as individuals. And this is where the ability to give them training on leadership, on business skills, or on new technologies can come to the forefront. That's one of the reasons why we're proud to be a Skillsoft company. And Skillsoft, for those who don't know, our parent company is the world's largest provider of online learning. So we have an incredibly vast library of training for leadership, for business skills, for IT, for digital transformation. And as an integrated suite, we can offer all that training to people who might be clocking in, clocking out. So you've clocked out for your break, you can take your development training, your leadership training on the same device you used to clock in and clock out for your lunch break. And I think that's really powerful. Finally, we have the absence management technologies, which allow you to do things like request leave of different types, obviously wizards to guide you to the correct type of leave you need to have, real-time accruals, so you don't have to guess whether you have the leave. The system will forecast it and let you know if the leave will be approved. We can even do intermittent leave, so I need to take, my partner's pregnant, we're coming up to the due date, I know I'm going to need to take some leave, I want it pre-approved, but I don't know exactly what days yet. We'll handle that very well. You can even link in the wizards the content that you might need to say, am I eligible, in the leave request process. And that content can come from SumTotal Learn. So we have our policies in the system that you are assigned to read. And at the time you're taking leave, if you need to check the policy, well, it's there. And then all the workflows to have that leave approved and signed off by my manager. So that's really our offering in a nutshell. I just wanted to let people know it's there. Again, most of our customers know us for learning and talent. They don't know us for workforce management. But if you are in the market, give us a look at. And I think, Jarrod, that was all I was going to say about our offering. Did you want to wrap us
Thanks,
up
Tim.
and open it for any other questions?
Yeah, so what I might do just to wrap up, I might just give a bit of a bigger picture look over the next few minutes as to sort of where I see the industry moving over the next few years. And I think if you look at the diagram in the center, which has got workforce, enterprise, and customer in it, if you look at where we came from in a capitalistic world, it was very much around the enterprise. It was about the shareholder. It was about making money for the organization, ensuring that the shareholders were looked after, that the organization was compliant, and so on. And I think while that is still absolutely important to an organization these days, there's a couple of other considerations or parts of the business that are really becoming prominent now, and it's that whole workforce interaction and customer interaction, and it's that whole thing about keeping it human and working within all of those constraints of the enterprise, the workforce, and the customer to make sure that the needs and wants of all of those areas are balanced. And then if you look at expanding that out even further, there's a number of other considerations that within a work environment today are becoming much more top of mind than perhaps they were a number of years ago. Mental health is a really important one. We live in a digital world. Digital's all around us. We're in an always on economy. So what do we need to consider from a mental health point of view? And that's just an example of a mental health consideration. We need to be conscious of the environment around us. What about the community around us? There is a greater consideration and a greater expectation within the workforce and within the customers these days for the enterprise to take into consideration a number of other areas that are not just related wholly and solely to the enterprise. It's things outside the enterprise. And there are a lot of companies doing this, but I think it's becoming more and more relevant today and more top of mind for 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 for, for us as a race, as a human being. And then if we also look at the transition that's taking place now with digital, everyone needs to be a the digital savvy person and not naive to digital. Data science is becoming much more relevant because now we're making decisions based off actual data. Um, we need to be able to tell stories to take people on our journeys. Problem solving is very important to make sure that we can actually logically work through a solution and make a decision based off fact and logic and not based off emotion. Collaboration with remote and dispersed workforces now is becoming much more important. So, again, I'm just wanting to sort of paint a bit of a picture as to everything that we've spoken about. How does this sort of all pull together? And really, this is the digital workforce. This is the digital age in which we work now. And these are the types of things that we need to consider now and into the future. And
Yeah, and
that's
I'd
that's
agree.
sort of where I sort of wanted to leave it there today from my perspective, Tim.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to just add this point that your WFM systems that have to look at things like compliance as a start point and can go so much further now to skill up your people, to improve their experience that they give to their customers, and to make you ready for digital. Those WFM systems are part of larger human capital management systems that go from learning, from talent and talent acquisition, talent expansion, and even the sort of training and the materials you give to your team to help them tell better stories, to help them service their people better, to give them the digital skills they need. This is stuff that we can help with, and any decent system, any tier one system, of which SumTotal is one, should be able to allow you to do that. And of course, if your system doesn't, I'd always encourage you to come and talk to us and talk to Jarrod, because I think this is where his company can really help you understand the journey you have to go through, not just to deliver the software, but we have to do beforehand and we have to do afterwards to really measure it, to make sure it is part of the flow of work. Now, I see we've got a couple of questions, but we're almost out of time. Jarrod, one here. So, what would you see as the greatest impact of digital transformation on the workforce? If you had to pick up one, what would be the greatest impact of digital transformation on the workforce? I mean, I think mobile, I
I
think artificial intelligence, but I'm curious on your thoughts, and maybe we wrap it up at the end of that.
Yeah, I'd probably go from a slightly different perspective, and I'd say it's mindset. I think that to transform from where you're at now to a digital way of working, it's all about having the right mindset to take you through that process. And if if you're just going to implement digital and implement the same process that you had years ago, that's not going to get you to where you need to be. It's all about making sure that you've got the right mindset to take the journey, to take the organization on a journey to actually improve the life of the worker. And ultimately, that has trickle on effects to the enterprise, to the customer, and so on. So from my perspective, Tim, I'd say mindset is the most important thing within the organization.
Yes, and changing the mindset can be the hardest thing to do. You can roll out new technologies, but if you haven't changed the mindset, they're not guaranteed to succeed. And that's probably a
Indeed.
great note to wind us up, Jarrod. We are almost at the top of the hour. I'd like to give you my personal thanks, and also on behalf of SumTotal, thank you for spending your time. I would encourage everyone to have a look at the book. And if you do need Jarrod's help, you can reach out directly to him. The details are there. Jarrod will help guide you regardless of the technology solutions that you end up implementing. And of course, if you are looking for a technology solution, I'd always encourage you to look at SumTotal. That's my employer, and Skillsoft for the content. But really, the idea here is that if you can change your mindset to a digital way of thinking and really get the benefits that will bring, the technology itself, I hate to say this, but the technology itself is somewhat secondary. But thank you, Jarrod, for your time. I really appreciate it. Was there anything that you'd like to finish off on?
No, the future is bright, and don't accept things for the way that you've always had to accept them. Challenge the norm, and make it happen. It's only you that can do it. And thank you to yourself, Tim, and for SumTotal for inviting me onto the webinar today to share some knowledge and some experiences with you.
Fantastic. Appreciate it, Jarrod. Have a great day. And everyone else, enjoy your day. Thank you so much for your time, and we look forward